part of the Simpsons lost episode Creepypasta. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on this show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present resulted in them getting very angry and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt. I first heard about it at an event where David Silverman was speaking. Someone in the crowd asked about the episode and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours early. The episode's production number was 7G06. The title was Dead Bart. The episode labeled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later and given Dead Bart's production code to hide the letter's existence. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about this will cause them to do anything they can to stop you from communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone. As he was leaving the building, he didn't seem upset that I had followed him. Probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode, though, all color drained from his face. He started trembling. And he started trembling. When I asked him if he could give me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper and wrote something on it and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it is for reasons you will see in a second. I entered the address onto my browser and I came to a website that was completely black except for a line of yellow text and a download link. I clicked on it and a file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I have ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, I copied the file onto my CD. I tried opening it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other episode, but it had very poor quality animation. If you have seen the original animation for Sung Enchantment Evening, it was very similar but less stable. The first act was very normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, and Bart seemed to have general anger and hatred for his parents. The episode The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip. Near the end of Act 1, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around as you expected. However, the plane was about 50 feet off the ground. Bart broke a window on the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animated style of The Simpsons would represented life and death that turned things more realistic. This was used in the first episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took a full advantage of it not having to move and made it almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with the shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at their table crying. The crying went on and on. It got more pained and sounded more realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you can hear murmuring in the background, and the characters could barely made out. They were stretching and blurring. They looked like deformed shadows and with random bright colors thrown on them. There were faces looking in the window, flashing in and out, so you were never sure what they looked like. This crying went on for all Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were scaringly thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was just lying in front of his tombstone, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to the summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in this version I saw. You can't tell what Homer is saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in this background had the names of every Simpson guest star on them. Some that had no one had heard in 1989. Some that had never been shown on the show yet. Some that haven't been on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guess who died since like Michael Jackson and George Harrison. The dates were when they would die. The credits were completely silent and seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpson family on their couch, like in the intros, but all drawn in hyper-realistic lifeless style, like Bart's corpse. A thought occurred to me after seeing the episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstone to predict the death of living Simpsons guest stars, but But there's something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date.